Hey guys, welcome to the instruction video for the do-it-yourself USB powered logic gate. Component sheets and written instructions can be found on the instructions page of our website, which I will link in the description. Let's get started. Alright, so everything that we've got here is what comes with the do-it-yourself kit for the USB powered logic gate. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to set everything to the side and get to the back of our board, which is where we're going to start soldering. First thing you want to do is you want to tilt the board to whatever angle is good for you and put a little bit of solder on the right hand side of each solder pad. And for the transistors, put it on the base of the transistor pad. The reason that we're putting the solder on the right hand side of these solder pads is so that we can drop the components on them and just get them to stick on the solder when we apply a little bit of the soldering iron. Alright, now that we've got a little bit of solder on each of the solder pads, we're going to get our 1.3K resistors and we're going to start putting them on. To get the resistor to the board, all you have to do is put the resistor on top of the pad where the solder is, touch your soldering iron to the resistor and the solder. It's going to melt a little bit and then it's going to stick to the pad. And what you do is you put your tweezers on top of the component, you reapply heat to the solder and push the component down so that both sides of the component are touching the pads cleanly. Make sure it's straight and you're good to go. Once you have all the 1.3K resistors on, go ahead and grab another pack of resistors. We got the 10K resistors here, and just put them where they're labeled on the PCB. Now we've got all the resistors on, it's time to add the diodes. Important thing to note about the diodes. On the diodes, there's 3 gray stripes on the left side of the diode. You need to make sure on the board that those 3 gray stripes are on the right side so that the diode is upside down. Everything on this board is oriented, positive is on the left, negative is on the right. So make sure that those gray stripes are on the right side. Alright, all the diodes are done. Let's put on our NPN transistor. We only have one of these, so it'll come in a single piece packaging, pretty easy to identify. If for some reason you mix all your transistors up, just look at the component sheet and you'll be able to identify which one's which by the markings on the top. For me, the easiest way to get the transistors on the board is to apply a little bit of solder to the base pad like we did before. You put the transistor on, you push down, apply a soldering iron to the base pad, and then all of your connectors should be securely on the pad then. And then you solder the missing connections. Now it's time to do our 3 PNP transistors, and then we're almost done with the bottom of the board. Alright, and now we have all of our bottom board components barely soldered on. So now what we need to do is we need to solder the unsoldered side of the pads and make sure that they all have good connections and good solder joints on them. What I like to do is I like to start in rows, and I save the transistors for last. So I'm going to start up here at D5 on this diode and just go straight down. D5, R2, move to the next row, do these two, move to the next row, do these ones, and save the transistors for last. That's the easiest way for me to do it. Now that we've added solder to the left-hand side of all of our resistors and diodes, we need to solder the collectors and emitters of the transistors. Now that we've got solder on the left-hand side, we need to go back and resolder the right-hand pads, because that little bit of solder that we put on to begin with is not good enough of a connection. So we're going to turn the board back around, we're going to take our solder braid, and we are just going to make sure that each right-hand solder has an actual good connection. And we just do that just by putting a little bit, just by reflowing the solder on the right-hand side of the board. Oh, and don't forget to do the base of the transistors. Just make sure that they actually have a good connection. Alright, congratulations. We are now done with the bottom of the board. We're going to move on to the top. So for the top of the board, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to apply a little bit of solder to the right hand side of each LED solder pad. You don't want to get a whole lot, you just want to put enough on there that you can reflow it and stick the LED on there. Keep it in place. Need to get my good tweezers for the LEDs. For LEDs, I like to use my hook tweezers because they can hold the LED in place really nicely, and I can push down and get it nice and firm on the board. Alright, let's get started with our LEDs. The positive end of the LED needs to go on the left-hand side. Everything on this board is oriented. Positive is on the left, negative on the right is on the right. To put the LED on the board, you pick it up with your hook tweezers, you place it on the pad, you push down, and then you touch your soldering iron to the solder to remelt it, and then your LED is going to push down nice and tight on the solder pad. Then you do that for every one. Alright, now that we have all the LEDs on, and they're just soldered on the right hand side. We're going to go ahead and flip the board around and solder the left hand side. Now that we've got the left hand side all soldered up, we want to go ahead and resolder the right hand side. Make sure all of those right hand side connections are good connections. And there it is. We have all of the LEDs attached on the front side of our board. Alright, now we're going to go to the back side. And this is the most important part of the whole thing. We have to put on the micro USB. Now, to do the micro USB, we want to apply a little bit of solder to these data line connections. They're the 5 pins on the bottom side of the board. And you only want to put a little bit because you just need enough for this to stick, and you don't want to create a short between the ground and the voltage. So, gently melt and spread some solder over these pins. And now that we've got some solder sitting on there really nice, we're going to pick up our USB pin. And on the bottom of the USB, there's these 2 tiny bumps. You can just scrape them off, because if you don't, this won't sit nice on your board. So there's 2 little plastic bumps on the bottom of your USB that you need to scrape off. Line up the data lines, then push down on it hard. While you're pushing down, you want to take your soldering iron and you want to go ahead and reflow that solder that we had put on those solder pads. And you'll feel it push down once they melt. Alright. Now our USB is on there. Good. Now that our USB is on there, we want to really generously apply solder to the legs and solder pad, because this is going to make it really strong on there so that we don't rip it off pushing the wire in and out. So, you know, go ahead and put a lot of solder on there so it holds nice and tight, get it hot. Alright. There we have it. Alright, now we're going to go. The easiest way for me to put the switches in is I put my PCB in the PCB holder, take my switch, drop it in the top, put some solder on my soldering iron, flip this over, and put enough solder in there just to hold it in place. And see, the switch is nice and straight, it's held in place, and I'm going to go ahead and do that for all of the switches. Now that we've got all the switches barely hanging in there, we're going to flip the board upside down, and we're going to start on the left hand side and just solder every pin the whole way over. Now that we've got all the switches on the front on, we need to put on our on-off switch. Alright, good. Our on-off switch is on. Now we need to put in the battery cases. Alright, now that the battery cases are in, we need to make sure that this works. So we're going to take our batteries, we're going to open them. We're going to pop them in the back. Okay, batteries are in. So now let's see if our board works. Ta-da! Alright, looks like every switch works. Great. Okay. Alright, if battery works, now let's see if our USB works. Plug it in, turn it on. Works. Okay, congratulations. We just finished our board. The USB works, the battery works, every light works, every switch works. So, that's it. Thanks for watching.